Okay, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at a couple of music videos from the artist Shadowsphere.
Yeah.
And we're specifically looking at Cherries and Lesson Learned.
Okay.
And these are some lyrics that a listener sent to us.
Awesome.
And I think it'd be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast these two songs,
Yeah,
because they both kind of deal with relationships, but they deal with very different parts of that whole arc of a relationship.
for sure. Yeah.
And so Cherries is kind of the hopeful beginning, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And then Lesson Learned is kind of the aftermath, the sort of the more painful side of things sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And you can definitely see just from the titles of the songs that they're coming from like completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right.
And I think what's going to be really interesting is seeing how those narratives play out because it's almost like a before and after picture of what happens when you go through a significant romantic experience.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think, we've all been there in some way, shape, or form, and we all know how like amazing it can be at the beginning and then how like really, really hard it can be if it doesn't work out.
For sure.
So let's start with the happier side of things. Let's start with Cherries and kind of see, what Shadowsphere is telling us here.
Okay.
So the first thing that we get is this setting, this sort of scene is set for us. It's an October night outside a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a typical blind date.
Oh.
And you get the feeling that that our protagonist here, our singer, didn't really have very high hopes for this whole thing. He says like didn't expect much. He kind of shrugged it off. I thought it was all fun.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if he's been on a few too many blind dates before.
Right.
Like he's just kind of going through the motions and not really
Yeah.
expecting to find anything special.
Yeah, and so then you get this like really interesting shift in the narrative, because it goes from, kind of being jaded to all of a sudden, and then she turned around like a dream come true.
Oh, wow.
And suddenly I
Okay,
knew.
so it's like love at first sight almost.
Right, yeah, this like instantaneous like recognition of like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, have you ever experienced or witnessed something like that where it's just like a look across a room and it's just like boom, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure. I think we've all had those moments where you lock eyes with someone and there's just this spark.
Right,
And it really is fascinating what happens in the brain at that moment
right.
because scientists believe that when we make eye contact with someone, especially someone we're attracted to, it triggers the release of all these hormones and neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin,
Oh, wow.
which are associated with pleasure and bonding. And that can create this really intense feeling of connection, even if you don't even know the person yet.
Wow. Yeah. And then I think that's a really good point because the next lines in the song really kind of focus on those the sensory details.
Yeah.
Her lips were soft like cherry candy sweet and lost in her eyes I found myself complete.
Wow, so he's like totally smitten.
Right. It's like he's just completely intoxicated by this person already. And it's like this really vivid imagery too. It's not just like, oh, she's pretty. It's like he's really zeroing in on like very specific details.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he uses the simile of cherry candy sweet to describe her lips.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the one hand, it's very innocent and playful.
Yeah,
But then on the other hand, cherries are often associated with passion and even temptation.
that's right. Yeah.
So it's like there's this underlying sensuality there too.
Right. And then that line about like, being lost in her eyes and finding himself complete, like
Yeah,
that speaks to something really deep. It's like this longing for connection and this feeling of like finally being understood.
for sure. It's like he's found the missing piece of himself in her.
Right. And it's funny because it goes from this like, kind of surface level stuff to then like really, really big ideas.
Yeah.
Like she was the one, fate's in the play. And he's like no longer skeptical. He believes in fate's mysterious ways.
Okay, so he's going all in on this.
Yeah, it's like this whole grand narrative is being built in just these few lines.
Yeah, and I think that's something that happens a lot in the early stages of infatuation.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to look for signs and confirmations that this connection is special,
Right.
even preordained like it was meant to be.
Right. Yeah, we want it to be like a movie.
Exactly.
Right.
And that can lead to a kind of confirmation bias,
Oh, okay.
where we
Yeah.
emphasize details that fit our desired narrative
Right.
and downplay any potential red flags.
Yeah, we kind of edit the story in our heads to fit what we want it to be.
Exactly.
And then he goes on to say that they talk for hours like no time to pass and that every word she spoke was like magic.
Oh, wow.
So, it's like that classic, like, you lose all track of time, it's just like you're so engrossed in the conversation.
Yeah, that feeling of flow in a conversation can be so intoxicating
Yeah.
because it makes you feel like you're truly connecting with someone on a deep level.
Right. Yeah, you're like on the same wavelength.
Exactly. And it's something that we don't always experience in our everyday interactions.
Right. So it makes it feel even more special when it does happen.
For sure.
And then we get this really powerful statement. In that moment, I knew she was mine.
Oh, wow. That's very possessive.
Yeah, it is, right? And I'm curious to get your take on this because on one hand, it's like, oh, that's so romantic.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like, whoa, that's a little intense. Like you just met this person.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely reflects the intensity of early infatuation.
Yeah.
Where emotions can feel all-consuming.
Right.
And you just want to hold on to that feeling and never let go.
Right.
But I do think it's worth noting that this kind of immediate sense of ownership can sometimes be a sign of underlying insecurity or a desire for control.
Oh, that's an interesting take.
Yeah, it's like he's claiming her before she even has a chance to claim herself.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's an important nuance to point out because it's like we can get so caught up in the romance of it all, but there are these deeper psychological dynamics at play too.
Absolutely.
And then we get another layer of complexity added to this whole thing because it turns out that she's the one that got away.
Oh, wow. So there's history.
Yeah, she was his teenage crush.
Oh, okay.
And now, like, years later, they've reconnected.
Wow, that's got to be a lot to process.
Right. Like, talk about fate, It's like all these what ifs are suddenly coming back up.
Yeah, and rekindling a past connection can be incredibly powerful because there's already a foundation there, even if it's a nostalgic one.
Right.
And it can feel like you're picking up where you left off.
Right. Like no time has passed at all. And this renewed connection, it seems to have had a really positive impact on him. He says that she set me free with her gentle touch and that she made broken parts of me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And it suggests that like he's been through some stuff.
Yeah.
And that she's somehow like helping him to heal.
Yeah, and I think we often seek partners who we feel can complement us in that way.
Right.
Like they can offer what we feel we lack.
Right. Yeah, and it gets even more intense because he says, I never knew a blind that could lead to such bliss. And he finds eternal happiness.
Okay, so he's like completely head over heels.
Yeah, he's all in on this.
Yeah, and it's interesting how he uses the word eternal because it implies that this happiness is going to last forever.
Right. Yeah, it's like he's found his forever person.
Exactly.
And then, you've got this whole romantic setting. It's like, under the moonlight of shadows and a twine whispered sweet nothing, hearts were unconfined.
Wow, that's like straight out of a romance novel.
Right? It's like this perfect moonlit night and, hearts are unconfined.
Yeah, it's very idealized.
Yeah, it is. And then they're exchanging loving words. There's this feeling of spirits free. Like, it's just like everything is perfect.
But it sounds like they're really connecting on a deep level.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, like, have you ever felt that kind of, like, transcendent connection with someone where it's almost like spiritual?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think those early stages of infatuation can be so powerful because the release of neurochemicals in the brain can actually create a feeling of euphoria and intense connection.
Wow. So it's like a biological thing.
Yeah, it's like our brains are wired to make us feel this way.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But then, even in the midst of all this positivity, you get this like subtle hint of potential future loss.
Oh.
He says, yet her absence now feels like a part of me.
Mm.
And then it goes on to say, now she runs away. I hope she comes back in Juba Day. Hey-oh, she comes back. Can't be another day.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like there's this urgency.
Yeah.
Like a fear of losing her.
It's almost like a premonition.
Right. Yeah, like a foreshadowing of something.
Like maybe this happiness isn't as secure as it seems.
Right. Yeah, and it kind of leaves you on this like cliffhanger.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, let's shift gears now and let's dive into lesson learned.
Okay.
And as the title suggests, this is a very different vibe.
Yeah.
The opening lines are, I pull my heart out, give it all away.
Oh, wow.
Left me stranded in this barren land and feeling left me incomplete.
So we've gone from bliss to heartbreak.
Right. Yeah, it's like a complete 180.
Yeah, and the imagery in these lines is so stark and desolate, like barren land, incomplete. It really creates this sense of emotional devastation.
Right. Yeah, it's like he's lost everything.
And it's interesting how this directly contrasts with the vulnerability and openness he expressed in Cherries.
Right, yeah, like he let his guard down and got hurt.
Exactly.
And then he goes on to talk about unrequited love, and it's
Yep.
just like this gut punch. You know, he says, I gave you everything, but you gave me nothing in return.
Yeah. That's one of the most painful experiences in a relationship.
Yeah.
That feeling of imbalance where you're pouring yourself into it and getting nothing back.
Yeah, and then it's like all those illusions have been shattered. He says, I thought I found my everything in you, but all I got was EMP. Nothing true.
Oh, wow. That EMP imagery is really powerful.
Yeah, it's like everything just got wiped out.
Yeah, it's like a sudden incomplete loss.
And then that line, I thought a love would soar and sing, but all I got was a lesson learned.
Hmm.
And that lesson learned is repeated a lot.
Yeah, it's like he's really trying to hammer home that point.
Yeah, like he's trying to learn from this pain.
And it's interesting how he contrasts the soaring and singing with the EMP.
Yeah.
Because like all his hopes and dreams for this relationship just got completely obliterated.
Right, and then he talks about building castles in the air, dreams so grand, but then being left me stranded in this barren land.
Yeah, it's like he was living in a fantasy world.
Right, and reality came crashing down.
Yeah, and it's a really common experience in relationships.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the potential of what could be
Right.
that we lose sight of what actually is.
And then that line, I laid my love at your feet, but you walked away.
Oh, man, that's brutal.
Yeah, it's like so direct and painful.
Yeah, it really highlights the feeling of rejection.
And it's like all those promises they made are just gone. Promises whispered now. Just castles in the wind left me wondering where all has been.
It's like the foundation of their relationship just crumbled.
Yeah, and the feeling of abandonment is just like palpable. You let me stumble, let me fall. You left me stranded, an empty soul.
It's like he's completely lost and alone.
But then there's this turning point, you know? He starts to pick himself up. He says, now I'm picking up the pieces of my shattered trees, learning to end my broken scenes. I will let you ghost me anymore. I'll find the strength to close this door.
Yeah, there's a shift in his energy.
Yeah, it's like he's starting to reclaim his power.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important step in the healing process.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you have the strength to move on.
And then he just like declares, now I rise again stronger to those who don't deserve my love, true love I preserve. And he repeats that line.
Yeah, it's like a mantra.
Yeah, it's like he's affirming his self-worth.
Yeah, and it's interesting how he talks about preserving true love
Mm-hmm.
because it suggests that he still believes in love.
Right. Yeah, he's not jaded.
Yeah, he's just learned a valuable lesson.
And the song ends with, I thought I love you, but all I got was a last learn.
Oh, so he's putting this behind him.
Yeah, it's like he's closing the chapter.
Yeah, and that slight variation from lesson learned to last learn,
Mm-hmm.
I think it emphasizes the finality of it.
Right, yeah, it's like he's really moved on.
Yeah.
So when you look at these two songs together, it's like you go on this whole emotional roller coaster.
Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
it's like the highs and lows of love.
Yeah, and I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to.
Right, because we've all been there in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
And what I think is really interesting is how, like, Cherries is so idealistic,
Yeah.
and it's, like, all about the potential of love.
Yeah.
But then Lesson Learned is, like, the reality check.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that love isn't always easy.
Right, and that heartbreak is a part of life.
Yeah, and that it's okay to grieve and to learn from those experiences.
Right, yeah, and I think what's really important is that even though he went through this heartbreak and lesson learned,
Yeah.
he still believes in love.
Yeah.
He's not giving up.
And I think that's a really powerful message.
Right, yeah, it's like you can go through the hard stuff
Mm-hmm.
and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly.
So what do you think is the biggest takeaway for our listeners from these two songs?
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest takeaways is that it's okay to be vulnerable in love,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also important to be aware of the potential risks
Right.
and to protect yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think another takeaway is that heartbreak is not the end.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for growth. And I think what Shadowsphere is trying to tell us is that even though love can be painful,
Mm-hmm.
it's still worth it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think that's a beautiful message to end on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to leave our listeners with this thought. You know, we've talked about how powerful those early feelings of infatuation can be,
Yeah.
but how often do we let those feelings cloud our judgment?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, like, are we so eager for connection that we ignore red flags or maybe even our own intuition?
That's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a balancing act, you know, because you want to be open to love,
Mm-hmm.
but you also want to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So how do you do both?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's something that we all have to figure out for ourselves.
Yeah. And it's a journey.
Right. Yeah,
It's a-
exactly. It's a journey, and I think these two songs from Shadowsphere really give us a lot to think about in terms of that journey.
Yeah, for sure. They offer a lot of food for thought.
So thank you for joining us on another deep dive.
Yeah. This is a good one.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.